Hello, everybody, and welcome to the premiere edition of Bill Chase and the Movies, episode number one. This week's show, movies are a little outdated. I apologize. Just nothing really has come out recently outside of Watchmen, and I have not seen that yet. So these are movies that are probably pretty much run their course in the box office. So I'm just going to give you just reviews of some of the ones I've seen lately. So here we go. To kick off today's show, everybody's favorite hockey mask wearing lunatic is back again. That's right, Jason Voorhees, and he's after more stupid teenagers in the reimagining of the Friday the 13th films, or at least the first four Friday the 13th films I found it on Wikipedia. Now, the original Friday the 13th was released back in 1980. It was a brilliant piece of work in terms of the glorified B movie genre, if you will, where it was just a step above the other B movies at the time, but it still had those elements there. I personally loved the first one. The second one was also really well done, and it was a good introduction to Jason. The third one was pretty good. Then the fourth one is where it all started going south. The fifth one was just awful. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. Six was passable. Seven and eight make Kate Hudson movies look like Citizen Kane. And while nine was good enough, Jason X was the very definition of reprehensible. Despite this, I had a lot of intrigue going into this movie, being a big horror fan, and I wasn't disappointed because, well, I wasn't expecting a thing really. As a matter of fact, I was expecting to see what could have been an early candidate for worst movie of 2009. However, what I got was slick production values, a couple effective scares, amazing cinematography, sweet visual effects, amazing new dimensions, and traits that the Jason character has been lacking for quite some time, and it's a lot more realistic, to be honest with you. And it was, you know what, the acting was passable. That said, however, Friday the 13th was every bit as predictable as most horror films, and it had the same cliches and formulas, but at least the college try effort was there. What this movie really strikes out on is, of course, originality and its effectiveness of the plot and the characters. One of the few things I enjoyed about the Halloween remake was how well they wrote the character of Michael Myers' mother, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, and the actress playing Laurie was effective, albeit not great. I still didn't really care for much of the characters in this film, however, but at least they were slightly more one-dimensional, and sometimes, you know, that's all I ask for. Some of you may criticize me for praising the glorified B-level of the early Friday the 13th films, and yet mocking the others for the exact same thing. The fact is, if you're a franchise going this long, the characters as well as the stories, as well as the franchise itself, should grow. I mean, if there's no growth in a franchise, people are just going to get sick of seeing the same thing over and over and over again, and that's exactly what happened to Friday the 13th movies. Now, see, the difference between this and a Nightmare on Elm Street series was that something new is always happening with Freddy. We always learn something new about him every movie. We always learned about a new power he possessed, the effects he had on people. That's what I loved about it. It was more consistent, and there was more continuity with the Nightmare movies. That said, they weren't perfect themselves, but you know, he wasn't a one-trick pony. And while there were lackluster Elm Street films, I never found any of them to be overly terrible. So, yes, I'm aware Jason can't speak, and yes, uh, I know that you're thinking, how can he evolve if he can't speak? Well, they there's a way they could have done that. It's not all about dialogue in films, not. But you know, what, good movie or not, Nightmare on Elm Street always had something interesting happening, but not all the Friday the 13th movies can say that. But all in all, for this one, Friday the 13th gets 2.5 stars out of 5. So I'm recommending it to people who like this genre. They'll probably enjoy it. But as for me, that's slightly not recommending it. But it was ambitious. So I guess you could say, meaning it was close but no machete. I guess, well, I know that was bad, but whatever. But, you know what, it was about as equally as good as the Halloween remake, which I didn't quite recommend, but it was still ambitious. Um, so yeah, that's it for the Friday the 13th remake. And, oh yeah, it was miles ahead of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies as of late. Anyway, the next movie I'm reviewing is one that had the girls clamoring to theaters over the course of Valentine's Day. This one is, of course, Confessions of a Shopaholic, starring the always adorable Isla Fisher, who made us laugh out loud in Wedding Crasher as the psycho fling of Vince Vaughn, as well as playing a very down-to-earth role with a lot of heart and definitely maybe last year, year and a half or so ago, with Ryan Reynolds. This time Fisher is playing Rebecca, a clueless shopaholic who praises the name of Gucci pretty much. Fisher's character is somewhat of an airhead, but she brings a sweetness to this film. It isn't just some boring, brain-dead ditz or uninteresting like Reese Witherspoon's character of Elle Woods in the horribly unfunny Legally Blonde movies. For some reason, I expected some lame sight gags and typical dumb humor that fill oh so many films. More on that a little later on. Fisher was effective in her foray into physical comedy here, actually. She really goes all out here and reminds me a bit of a, maybe, I should say, what a female John Ritter would be. The sight gags aren't there just because the movie calls for it. And a lot of it we don't see coming. They're there because it's what her character necessitates. Someone who's really trying hard not to be a run-of-the-mill ditz, but she still is who she is. Now, the story of the film is Rebecca. I mean, she was born into a run-of-the-mill family, but she herself had big dreams, high expectations about being in the high-class world of fashion. However, things don't quite pan out for her, and for reasons I won't spoil, she ends up in the money management magazines. Irony that was actually effective and funny and doesn't insult our intelligence. It's because she's so charismatic and different, which is why the editor is enamored by her, that she generates this great energy, and it's what helps this movie really flow. The performances here are surprisingly effective and really help an otherwise too simple plot flow without getting too boring. And a lot of it is funny. I have to give credit where credit is due, despite my pre-dismissal of the film being just another chick flick with no redeeming value whatsoever. But Fisher here is just so sweet and so lovable in this film. I couldn't help but enjoy it for the most part. And I actually find Fisher's character almost be comparable to Carrie Bradshaw of Sex and the City. While there are major differentials, the similarities are present as well. They know what they know and talk about and rave what they know of the best, and also know what they want out of life. I also have to give this film credit for not creating a false sense of reality and not taking itself too seriously, which is what I accuse most chick flicks of doing. While the movie does have its shortcomings, Fisher's performance as well as some nice laughs help it flow along. So guys, if it's still playing at a theater near you and your girl wants to see a movie, it's not a complete waste of time. Plus, I love Fisher. Come on, come on. I give the movie 3 stars out of 5. Okay, next up, we have another Valentine's flick, so to speak. He's Just Not That Into You. It has an ensemble cast including Jennifer Aniston, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Connelly, Justin Long, Drew Barrymore, and Scarlett Johansson, among many others. I won't get into the whole tangled web that this movie is, but I'll still say a little bit about it. The big question is, of course, how do you tell when someone is just not that into you? It's not really difficult to see if your eyes are open and if you take a good look if the writing's on the wall. But however, what I like about this film is that it shows the different reasons why we don't always see it, or maybe even choose not to subconsciously. Because we are just so blinded by the idea of being in love with someone, or just being on a date with somebody that we have a thing for, so to speak. The only gripe I have with this movie is that the actors leave much to be desired with their performances. I didn't really see much of an effort on Aniston's part, and that same goes for the film Marley and Me. While Connelly, Johansson, and Barrymore, who I've seen in some pretty ambitious roles in the past, don't seem to grasp what they're supposed to be in this movie. Despite this, I still thought the very talented Justin Long, who to me is becoming one of the best talents in Hollywood today, he delivered his dialogue with ease and simplicity, but really adapted it to his character. He really brought just a natural energy to it, and I really admire that about his roles in any movie he does. Look at his like some of his recent work, but the story basically revolves around 5 women who are asking that very question of the plot in that movie: is he really that into me? The theories they come up with, and sometimes listening to what society dictates, is what makes the task of figuring out the answer to that question all the more difficult.